Hi, I'm Claudia with Pivotal Peace. I'm your go-to mediator for navigating divorce while parenting children with special needs. I am also a LDA, legal document assistant based in the greater Los Angeles area. It's Friday. Let's talk about finishing your divorce, right? So you can get to like the weekend of your life where things are celebratory. I know divorce is hard. And even as you are finished with divorce, it can still be hard. But I promise you, if you continue to work on yourself, you're going to get to a point where you're like, okay, I've hit my groove. Maybe I didn't want this divorce, but things are looking up now and I'm doing so much better and life is great. So don't lose sight of that. There is hope. But in order to get there, I need you to finish your work. And I need you to make sure that your divorce decree is enforceable, right? Like saying that someone's not going to feed your child Oreo cookies because you don't like the number of calories in them. I don't know that the court's really going to be able to enforce that. That's going to be really challenging to prove. I know you wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't do that. That's why I gave that extreme example. But you really want to put things in that the court can enforce in the event that your former spouse decides, I don't want to do that anymore. So you only want to put things in there that the court can go, yep, you didn't do this. I see that you didn't do this. You need to do this or else. That's called legally binding. So you want to make sure you have a very detailed description of what assets and debts that you are keeping and what assets and debts that they are keeping. And on top of that, if they are keeping something that maybe your name is on, then you need to follow the steps of removing your name from that. Maybe it's a car, maybe it's a credit card, things like that. And they need to do the same for you. So it's not just, a lot of times it's not just taking the asset or taking on the debt. It's also removing the other person's name from it if that's possible. The other thing that the court can enforce is to make sure that child support and spousal support payments are paid. You don't want anything vague here, and I really doubt the court's going to let a vague agreement, I guess I'll pay about this amount of money in child support if I want to, when I feel like it on, I don't know, the 1st, the 3rd, the 12th. I guess it just depends. The court's not going to allow you to do that. So get clarity, and especially when it comes to spousal support, it's really a good idea to have a start date and an end date. You need to know when this ends, so put that in there. When it comes to your children, you've got a parenting plan. It's okay to deviate from that, but let that be the exception instead of the rule. Follow the plan. Hopefully you took the time to have a detailed parenting plan at minimum where you know where your kids are going to be Sunday to Saturday during school and during the holidays and during vacation time. You know what parent they're supposed to be with when. If nothing else, that's like the bare bones basic. Some people don't even put that in their final agreements. And then they get on the other side and it's ugly. Save yourself the drama of that by getting clear on this and then sticking to it. Because if you start implementing things differently and you're going off a different plan, like, well, I know I fought for 50-50 custody, but I'm just so busy with work and, they can be with their other parent all during the week and I'll just take every other weekend. You do that long enough, the other parent can go back and ask, hey, there's a change in circumstance. I need more support. This is the parenting plan. This is the custodial timeshare that's been implemented for the last year and a half. And now I want to make it official. So do your best to stick to the plan as best as possible. When you're communicating with your ex, especially in the years, the immediate months and years after the divorce, and I'm talking the first year or two, depending on your relationship and depending on what you were fighting about. So if you weren't fighting about the kids, it's probably okay. But if the kids were somehow involved in that, consider using email. Consider using a co-parenting app for a limited time, not forever. I don't think you should be using a co-parenting app until your kids are 18. Those things are stressful. No. But in the first couple of years, while emotions are still high, you're still getting used to this plan, use it and see if that helps decrease the conflict. If you have disputes over your custody, the last thing I want you to do is run straight to a lawyer. Give yourself 24 hours. There's a video I did last week, 24-hour rule. Give yourself 24 hours to kind of sit and think about it and contemplate what you can do, ways it can resolve. Give yourself 24 hours to calm the F down. Give your spouse, former spouse, that time too, before you jump to the conclusion of, well, you know what, I'm just going to get a lawyer and I'm going to lawyer up and they're going to send you a nasty letter. This is your child's other parent. Does that really need to happen? Is your child in harm? Is something bad going to happen to your child? Then it might be able to wait a little bit. And honestly, if something bad was really going to happen to your child, a lawyer is probably not the first person you should call. It's CPS and the police if you're really worried about imminent harm. So put those things, please put that into perspective. See if you can have, after you've calmed down, can we have a decent conversation? Can we pay? Nope, that's not working. All right, well, can we go to a mediator? See if we can have a conversation. Let a lawyer be your last resort unless things are really bad where your kids are harmed. Okay. You want to make sure you implement things about your investment accounts and retirement as soon as the divorce is over. There are some things that in yesterday's video talks about, was it yesterday? Well, it was earlier in the week. It talks about quadros. You want to make sure that whatever orders that you have, that they're executed. You can't get a quadro until the divorce has been finalized. But that don't mean you need to wait 20 years after the divorce to get the quadro because now you're ready to retire. No. You're going to forget until you reach retirement and wonder why you're not getting their checks. Your future self will thank you. Spend the money. Go get that quadro. Divide any other investment accounts. Make sure that if there's personal property that's supposed to be exchanged, that happens. That happens shortly after the divorce or maybe before it's finalized. You sign the paperwork, you know it's gone to the court. Maybe you're like, okay, well, this is what we've decided to do. We're just waiting for the judge to rubber stamp it. So let's divide this personal property. Get it done. If you're concerned that your spouse isn't, or your former spouse isn't complying, keep records. Okay? Don't let it go on for a long period of time. If maybe they were supposed to move out and find a new place, but they didn't, but they agreed to it in the custody in the divorce decree, maybe for that, something like that, maybe you ask an attorney to write a letter. Okay, that's different than just being represented. Okay, or maybe you just send a formal demand letter. Maybe you go online and Google how to write a formal demand letter to have them to move out of your house. Do that. Start that way. Okay, have a conversation. When your former spouse is refusing to do things and you have talked to them and you have maybe sent them a letter and maybe it's so bad you feel like I might need to seek some legal advice. You might need to, because you might need to ask the court to find them in contempt. Right, because they're not following the order. That might need to happen. All right? And if somebody stops paying support, child support or spousal support, their wages can be garnished. Liens can be put on their property. Now, don't do that unless they're really not paying you. If they ran into a hard time, don't do that, right? But if they're really being deceitful and hiding and not doing and evading, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? But only you know your former spouse, and there's a reason you guys are divorced. So, but just use that with caution of, I'm going to garnish your wages. That follows people around, so use that one with caution. Occasionally, post-divorce, you may realize we need to modify this. And I met with a couple who were like, we want to meet twice a year, every 6 months, and review our agreement and see if it's still working and modify it from there. Now, they can file a post-judgment stipulation and update their plan every 6 months. That would get a little tedious. There's not a huge filing fee for that, but that would get a little tedious. because they're going to be doing it twice a year. So for them, they've decided we're going to just kind of, it's an honor thing. We're going to put it in writing together, but we're going to be in agreement about how we're doing this. And the reason I know this is because they are already divorced and came back after the divorce to kind of reach some agreement on these things. And I'll tell you this, during the divorce, it was rough. And they've been divorced for maybe a year or so now. And you can already tell, even though that was uncomfortable for them, their relationship from here to here is different. It's improved. It's so much better. It's so much better. And by continuing to make these little improvements and changes, it's only going to increase their communication and make things better going forward for their shared children. But if you have some major changes you need to make, you can file for a, post-judgment stipulation where you guys agree to something and then you write it up and send it to the court. You can work with a mediator to do that. You can work on your own and have it documented by an LDA. You can work with an attorney. Okay, there's different routes that you can do. So it's really important, though, to obey the decree. Follow what's in the decree. If you make any verbal agreements, I wouldn't, until you guys are in a really good place. And usually those verbal agreements would probably only be like, oh yeah, you can pick them up early on this weekend because you're going out of town. Temporary minor things. Don't make no verbal agreements about money. No. Put that stuff in writing, right? You want proof. So just be cautious about verbal agreements unless it's something really temporary, like, oh, we just changed the pickup time or the drop-off time for this one weekend. All right, so this is a way I want you to be thinking about this as you're facing divorce of how can I write my final agreements so that the court will enforce them, and let's not put anything in there that's outlandish. And really be thinking about, do I need legal advice about these different terms? I will leave you with this. Let's say you're doing this DIY, which is totally cool, and you have your agreements written up. Maybe you and your spouse had a conversation about it at the kitchen table or at the coffee shop or whatever, and you've come to agreement on these terms. Before you sign, why not take it to an attorney to get a legal opinion on it? Because that attorney can advocate for you and see things really just looking and thinking about you. That way you know what you're signing is good for you and is legally enforceable. Okay, so don't dismiss that. You don't have to retain an attorney. You can pay for an hour of their time and you get a good review. Okay, have a great weekend and I'll see you guys on Monday. Bye.